So Keenan, many people in the West are overworked and underpaid. They come home to a tight existence with tons of debt, not enabling them to do what you do. What would you say to those that like to live the dream, travel, and earn money, or let's say leverage their income? And what I mean by that is earning in pounds, but yet spending in pesos. What sort of advice would you give to people who want to get out of that 9-to-5 rut?
I would first say it's the easiest thing to do in the world. Like there's no like worry necessary. You don't need to think like, oh, it's going to be such a shift, and no, basically these countries are so easy to live in. You get here, you think, oh well, it's the third world, but no, actually Medellin, for example, has all the infrastructure that any first world country has, even more at times, like the metro system, everything, the public services, like there's like nicer shopping malls than I've ever seen in Toronto or anything like that. So in that regard, you're coming to like a first world lifestyle.
Yeah.
But you're accessing it at third world prices.
Yeah.
And it's basically like a secret, right? That is being kept in some regards, because Colombia, for example, I mean, it doesn't have to be Colombia, but if you take Colombia for example, it has the stigma of the Pablo Escobar drug era that is still like toted in all the news and media and stuff like that. If you talk to somebody in a first world country, I'm going to Colombia, like, oh, be safe, like don't get killed or kidnapped or any of that. But these countries are so safe. Like that era is long gone. But at the same time, it's still very much a part of the consciousness of the first world culture, that these countries are unsafe and that they're violent and all of that. But if you're any part of these cities that you're going to be actually living in is completely safe, so nothing to worry about there. I would say yeah, just do it. Just get a ticket, one way flight or two-way flight if you want to just check it out, and you'll see immediately when you get here that why live somewhere where it costs you let's say $1,000 a month for rent, and you're in a studio or a one-bedroom apartment, where if you look at this finca, I pay like $1,000 a month Canadian for this property, which is a huge property.
And just for all of those, 1,000 Canadian is approximately, I think we worked it out at 600 pounds.
More
about 600. And this, where we are now, sorry to interrupt you, Keenan, is beautiful. I mean, how many acres is this?
It's probably an acre and a half, and it's a fully. We use the place as a retreat center, but we can get into that later. But basically, yeah, there's nothing you're going to find even remotely close to this lifestyle in let's say the big cities in Canada, for example, which is why I will never move back to Canada, live there, visit, of course, but for having a base of operations, I would say anyone who is able to be location independent, there's no reason to waste your money in living in the first world.
So give us an idea, okay, for a finca like this, and what exactly is a finca? Because there's a lot of people that don't know what a finca is first and foremost, and then what is a finca, and then how much in Canada would a finca like this cost? So what is a finca?
Well, I suppose you would call it a cottage.
Okay.
Or a rural property. Like sometimes a finca would be kind of like something that would like a very audacious like big swimming pool.
Right.
Like something that looks like it's from the narco era.
Right. And that's exactly what I was thinking.
And that's exactly, you can find those all over the place, and it's not that they're run by a drug lord or anything like that. Maybe they were built by one, maybe 40 years ago or something like that. And so they're very, exuberant and very luxurious. But a finca can also be like what we've got here is just it's open green space and nature, basically, peace away from the city. Only about half an hour from the city. But yeah, that's what a finca is. So depending on what you're looking for, you can pretty much find it.
And then price wise, if this was in Canada?
In Canada, I wouldn't even like venture to think about what
really
it would cost.
Expensive.
Yeah, it would be really, really expensive. Anything close to like a big city, it would be several $1,000s.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it wouldn't be accessible. It wouldn't be available.
Yeah, millionaires
Yeah.
would yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that's fair enough. So what is the one book that changed it all for you? The one book, I mean, for myself, and this isn't about me, but the one book that changed my life, the two books that changed my life were Rich Dad, Poor Dad and The 4-Hour Work Week. Those changed my mindsets completely. What is the one book that just did it all?
I don't think I have a one book that did it all. When I was young, I really enjoyed reading. I was really into fantasy. I really liked like the Lord of the Rings, and when I got a little older as well, I really enjoyed a lot of philosophy and a lot of fiction.
Right.
But that because for me, like the understanding of like let's say the 4-Hour Work Week or that was kind of already like ingrained into who I
you.
was.
Okay, fair enough.
Like what my code was is that I will not live this 9-to-5
lifestyle,
and there's no way. And it was just kind of it was just intuitive to me that is the right way to live.
Right.
So I didn't have a book for any of that, but I was really inspired by a lot of the Paulo Coelho books when I was traveling. The ability to listen to your intuition, the ability to understand that there's a language and a rhythm to this universe and to this world that is constantly in motion that very few people in the modern world here are able to tune into. But that if you're able to be silent, to calm yourself enough, to kind of fall into rhythm with that language, then everything flows.
Yeah.
And when I was solo, without a family and all that, it was even easier to do this, right? Because obviously it's just me and my intuition in the world. And I wake up every day in some country, what do I want to do today? Where do I want to go? What is it that I really want? And because there was no one around me that tying me to a past or tying me to an old story of who I was or who they thought I was or all this like the scheme that gets created from a young age that we never really escape because we're stuck in the same place, the same parents, the same friends, and they
indoctrination basically.
Yes, and they all have a story that they believe we are.
Yeah.
And because they continue to project that story onto us, we continue to believe that is us.
Right.
But it may not be our real story.
So that's interesting. How did you break out of? You say it was ingrained into your genetic code, but everything comes from somewhere. Where did this mindset come from?
When I was young and began to read, when I was younger, I had some tough times with like my social group, my friends. Like I was always hanging out with the older kids, and a lot of times I would end up getting picked on or not even picked on. It was just a weird dynamic that I was putting so much importance upon like this small little world that was the social sphere of like a kid in high school or in secondary school or whatever, and I suffered for that. And when I started to read, I think it was reading was the most important thing. I started to read, and I had these books about, and there was these characters who were sort of like who were adventuring off into the world and like conquering their fears, and basically these great people. Those characters inspired me, and I remember basically understanding that the world is such a large place. It's such a big place, full of possibilities, full of just everything. And why am I focusing on this tiny little world here when there's all of this out there? And then all of a sudden, like that little social group and that little world that was, my town and all things associated with that took secondary immediately. And now my mind was totally transformed, and I began to meditate. I get practicing a lot of meditation, getting really into the Eastern philosophies, Buddhism, Taoism, and studying those practices. Really, just that was it. That was basically like pulling off a mask that wasn't me, pulling off this identity that wasn't me at all, that had been placed upon me.
The indoctrination.
Yeah, and then once that was gone, and I was lucky that I did it at a very young age.
Right.
And I was lucky that I wasn't in any relationship, or that I didn't have any like attachments to other like a woman or anything like that at that age, because that would have curtailed that ability to kind of completely
and commitments, etc.
To come into myself really. And so because of all that, I was able to kind of see clearly who I was and know who I wasn't. And so because I knew who I wasn't, I could very quickly discard everything that had nothing to do with my heart, my being. And that's what led me led me off.
That's beautiful, man. That is beautiful. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also leave a comment. Even if you're not watching it on YouTube, go over to YouTube, like and subscribe and leave a comment.